This week's channel message from the angels is a fun one. It's something that I've never asked them before. It is about the energies of the coming month, what's going to happen in March, and it's going to extend a little bit March into April. But I was on a podcast that they wanted me to do a forecast for the coming month, and it just never occurred to me to ask before. And I love the answer. It was super cool. So I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So I'm sharing here the full text of that channeling. And then I will also put the link to the podcast that I was on, because we talked about things in a different way there. We kind of scanned through everything, and then we talked about a bunch of other topics in depth. So I'll include that one as well for you guys in the link below, or in the dialog box. But welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my channel, you guys. It is great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you guys holding this energy, sharing these messages with me. And for those of you who are new, my name is Ann Tucker. I'm a trance channel. I channel from the angelic realm, and I do that by I go into a deep meditative state or trance, and from there I raise my awareness as high as I can go. I go a little higher, I connect, and then messages and information come through. And I share it here with you guys on YouTube. And my process is I channel in advance. I do that usually the day before I channel, and the angels come through and they speak through my vocal cords. So I dictate, I just speak into the microphone. I use software on my computer, and it just gets the recording. And then afterwards, I'm able to go through and put in the punctuation, and it kind of comes through as just like one big blob of text. So I break it into paragraphs, I put in the punctuation, and then I'm able to take the time to analyze it and to look through and to try to understand it fully, because the angels don't speak in like the way they see the world is really different from how we see the world. We are very we see one thing at a time. We're very linear, and they tend to see everything all at once. So frequently in their messages, there are layers of meaning that I'm only able to access if I take the time to look through it and to really understand it. So that's my process. So you'll see me reading the message, and that is why, it's because I channeled it yesterday. So today's message is, as I mentioned, it is a forecast for the energies of March. And it is super cool. They're talking about, again, they have their perspective. They are most focused on our journey towards our own shift in consciousness. So they're talking about the way that things are going to be impacting us as a collective, both in terms of how we interact with others, and then how we then also experience energies internally in our relationship to ourselves. So they talk about some things that are kind of broader in scope, and then they also get into some specifics about things that we may see happening in the coming month to 2 months. So anyways, I think you guys are going to love the message. I also would love to let you know, if you try to sign up for the retreat and you missed, I know it sold out in like a day, I was able to add a couple spots. So if you would like to go, there's 2 spots available, and it might just be the one that you have been looking for. So I hope that this speaks to you. I hope you're able to come. All right, you guys, enjoy the message. So let's go ahead and dig in. Here's what they say. This is about the energies of March. They say, the dialogue between human beings enters into a new phase of reality, where openings seem fortuitous for melding, blending between people. Hardships you've endured and suffered seem lessened, as though the lengthy separateness can be endured differently, without perturbation or frustration. It is as though you are equally endowed with connection, and the blanket of arrival becomes equally felt by all. It is a lengthening subject for interpretation, where all things are melding and becoming one thing, where all things are discussed and planned as though operations that are held in reverence can be subjugated to the whims and needs of the several. The all ways of beingness become more present, more pressing, as though you are entering into new knowledge of one another. The opening hearts, the melding awarenesses create bridges, breaking down obstacles. New ways of melding together. The instrument of your focus is the argument and the new way of understanding. Sharpening perception. A distilled moment where you are encountering yourself and one another in a new way. And this then focuses how you are now behaving and perceiving and understanding one another. And the chaos that ensues from conflict seems unnecessary, as though you're tranquilized in the subjects that rise between you as obstacles, as though their meaning has been shortened and carries no more weight. This feeling of lessening burden, the lightening of energies, comes with a ricochet into the self and the sense of who you are, and the blending of your mind and the many. It lingers, allowing yourself a new perception of what you are, unfolding before your heart a new opening doorway, a new way of entering into the domain of what has been unsettled. The evacuation of the energies distilled for this purpose will come to a point, to a head, in the culmination with which you are endowed individually. It will be a focal point of awareness that comes through contact and constructive engagement with another, where a new perception of soul and self, in contrast and in conflict, shall come to your awareness. This unsettling of old behaviors leads yourselves into a perspective of sharing and guiding one another through hardship. It opens a doorway which becomes necessary in future times, a way of seeing yourselves now differently in harmful prospect. When things are unfolding in ways that feel dormant, quieting, and distinguished, you can come to the aid of one another and carry within yourself the memory of this time of dwindling separateness. When you engage with one another in a dialogue founded on real perception, culminating in harmony, and it will draw you toward each other once again. This comes at a time in your future when the long, drawn-out beginnings seem to come to term, and you are rising within yourselves more profoundly and certainly. This next month endows yourself with a creative spark of individualism and desire to be what you are, a sense of yourself as overcoming odds, a separation from what you have been and what is overpowering to yourself, a sense of yourself as claiming in dialogue and focus what you shall be, and disintegrating those thoughts of surrender to an influence that does not belong to you. You shall become more present and aware of the conflicts that are unnecessarily held within yourself regarding engaging in the tumult of your own housing, where emotionality stems from the depth of what you are. You shall come to terms with that more violent prospect of your own internal surrender to self. The creative aspects of which we are speaking are to come forward and toward and forward from the distinguishing of your individual light, as though it can be shared in safety. Whereas before you felt yourselves in a dormancy of quiet sleep. Therefore, the instigation of new things shall become more endowed with this quiet stroke, as though the self in slumber slowly guides them to the surface to be discovered. You cannot now have within yourself an understanding of what this shall be, for the spoken mind does not often encounter these quieter moments. But this distilled sentiment contains a power to elucidate what you are in a new way, a pronouncement that can be shared and revealed. Thus, creative forces are at play among many. We say the endurance of where you are shall change this month. The sensation that you are rising to be weakened, there is not the endurance that you'd hope for. A fear settles among yourself that you shall not make the yards or the sense of distance, that the ongoing futile expression of these days of turmoil become overwhelming, and you feel settled within your own heart to endure no longer, as though giving up were a preference. And we say to count upon your heart in these times, to know yourselves in need of momentary lapses of energy, and that the restorative value of these agonizing times of disquiet is enormous.
In the pace of your own reverie, you extinguish those longings which demonstrate your own hardship. And thus, in the expression of these low moments, you guide yourself toward higher expressive volubility. You can contain much more when these feelings are settled. Thus, we guide you to not restrict the low endowments when you feel yourself being stretched or ignored, undistinguished or left. When you feel yourself aching and unformed and without the will to move forward. Recognize in the space of these coming weeks, you will endure a loss of amplitude and force within the body. This you will endure and move beyond, and in the becoming, you will carry a brighter, heavier endowment of grace because of it. We say in the coming months, the spectacle of where you are shall increase in its length and duration. By this we mean that the surrounding light of the astral shall carry more force and weight upon you. A sense of your own selves as struggling is lengthened. The overpowering now you are committed to, and you forge a new blessing. We say the uncomfortableness of these endowments shall not last, shall not be enduring, but the lengthening of the soul shall stay with you, and you shall feel yourself again in the formation of the new endowment. As for specifics of what may pass in the different parts of the world, we perceive a sharing of peoples across distances, where others may come to terms with their own hearts unsettled and pave the way for transference of large amounts of persons. The movement of peoples is a blessing that comes to be revealed. The transference of people does happen in the coming months, the movement of peoples from one place to another in mass, in dialogue with their own identity and will, a sense of themselves as escaping on trial, in the suggestion of having been held against their will, in the desire for freedom, the desire for meaningful existence. They come to your door on the highways of transference along the lines of the earth herself, seeking refuge, and are sometimes denied. This we see in the coming months. They are unsettling to the consciousness of humanity. The great drifts of persons who feel themselves not endowed with a container to call home and a place to make family. This shall become an ongoing current that makes its way through the patterns of your consciousness. The unsettled and unsettling feelings of those that have surrendered their port to the way and unfolding. In banking, you shall discover the yield of crossed currents and undertow that draws into them the small behind the medium sizing institutions. The small shall suffer. The small shall begin a gentle decline, not distinguished or in denial. You shall find themselves in the pressure of the convergence of their own assets against the mired opportunities of their investments, and they shall be brought to their knees and drown in the undertow of this banking crisis. This shall come to pass in the coming months, and as we see the occurrence revealing itself. All right, so there is a bit more there, but like I said, it's if we go through everything, it's we'll be here for like 5 hours. So super interesting message, right? And like I said, and for those of you who just joined, I asked the angels specifically, because this was for a podcast where they were having me do like what are the energies of March? What's going to happen in March? And so I've never asked the angels that question before. I've never been so specific to be like, okay, what is going to happen in this next period of time? And they were showing me, this is kind of like March, April. It was like in this upcoming, this is it. And they were most interested because they're angels and because they see our direction in the world, they are most interested in things that affect our collective consciousness, right? In things that show our evolution or move our evolution forward. So all of the things they're talking about are somehow related to things that are coming that are related to the shift of the way that we are changing in a collective way. So it is super interesting. So, and good morning. Good morning to those of you who just joined us. Great to see you, Sherry. So let's go through and talk about the message more specifically and what they say. We can break it down. So, and you can tell, like in the way that they were talking in this message, that in some ways they speak a little bit, and the angel that came in was a different vibration, was specifically one that had a little bit more connection to earth. So, and that was, I think, designed and on purpose, because when you ask something like this, it becomes more tangible, if you know what I mean. So, but let's talk about it. So they say, the first paragraph, they say, the dialogue between human beings enters into a new phase of reality, where openings seem fortuitous for melding, blending between people. So this whole first section is telling us that in the upcoming month plus, like month, 2 months, somewhere in there, but in this next month specifically, that there will be a new energy that allows us to, it's almost like dropping grudges, or dropping like entrenched, difficult relationships. So imagine that you have like a family member that you just can't talk to, right? That is just, or like a friend that where you have something came up, like a difference between you, or you fought about something, and now it's like you just can't imagine what you're going to say to that person anymore, that you can't find agreement, or that there's like a wall between you. And they're saying this month, the energies are there where that wall can be dissolved. And in the process, it's like everybody, you and the other person, see themselves in the interaction, right? And start to see their role as the way that they're perpetuating, or that maybe that you might be perpetuating the difficulty without even knowing it. Right. And so it's like an opportunity to see ourselves through relationship, and to mend and repair old relationships that have been in difficulty. So really interesting, right? So here's where I'll keep going. They say that a new phase of reality where openings seem fortuitous for melding, blending between people. Hardships you've endured and suffered seem lessened, as though the lengthy separateness can be endured differently. So I think that's such an interesting choice of words. So it's the hardships you have endured. So places where you felt hurt. Then all of a sudden, it's not that they go away. It's that you can endure them differently, right? Without perturbation. That's a hard word to say. Why did they use that word? Perturbation. It sounds awfully close to other words, which I will just leave that off. So, or frustration. So we can feel it. In other words, we can think about things that used to upset us, but they don't upset us in the same way. It's like all of a sudden you see it through a fresh angle, right? Through a fresh lens. Things that used to be painful don't feel painful anymore. And then they say, it is as though you are equally endowed. So you and the other person equally endowed with connection. And the blanket of arrival becomes equally felt by all. So in other words, it falls like a blanket over the two of you and this other person, and the conflict, the blanket of arrival. So in other words, both of you have this awareness, or this realization, or this sort of dropping of whatever it was, the entrenched emotion, right, that was keeping you apart. So it seems to kind of like, it's almost like someone hits the pause button and you're able to see it in a new way. So they go on and say, it is a lengthening subject for interpretation. So, where all things are melding and becoming one thing. So what they're saying is that this experience we're going to have is part of a much longer dialogue that we're having with the universe and with each other, right? It's part of a much larger trend towards unity. So how do we find unity? We have to solve these little places in our experience where we are at odds with other people, right? So this is a piece of that larger puzzle of getting towards unity. Because think about imagine, if somebody, like the angels were to come down and snap their fingers and boom, unity. And you would come out into the world and you'd be like, yay, I love everyone except that person. I love everyone but you. Like that one person who really made me angry that one time, who has different politics than me, or who has this different idea, or who is mean, like everyone but you. And that can't be unity. So I think this is the idea, is that we it makes sense that this has to be a step on the path, that we have to have this experience of reaching out towards these deeply entrenched relationship, these difficulties, right? That seem like you just don't want to, you know what I mean? Where you're like, I would rather just not ever call that person again. Yeah. So they go on to say, yeah, it's a lengthening subject for interpretation where all things are melding and becoming one thing, where all things are discussed and planned as though and this is interesting, where as though operations that are held in reverence can be subjugated to the whims and needs of the several. So in other words, in this move towards unity that they're saying, where they say that when we are in the context of unity, all things can be discussed and planned among all of us, and operations that are held in reverence. So operations are like the ways that we do things that are held in reverence. So imagine like certain practices that we have that are like, no, we have to do it my way. Like this is the right way, right? This is the truth. Everybody's got their own truth. It'd be like me saying, no, everybody, has to be spiritual in my way. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. It's like whatever we hold as reverence, like this is the best way to be. Those are subjugated to the whims and needs of the several. So in other words, things that seem like our sacred cows, the things that we are like, nope, everybody has to do it. Like think about, organized religion, where they're like every other religion that's different from how we think is going to go to hell. Like that idea that everyone has to believe our way. Well, imagine if that falls away and that need to revere a particular way of doing things becomes subjugated to the discussion of everyone, to the understanding and incorporation of the several. So in other words, it can be done, and I like the interesting term of several because it doesn't say the all. It might mean that we have a local understanding, the several, everybody around you, right? How do we meet the needs of everyone that's around us? Yeah, so in discussion. So this is that idea that we're talking to other people, we're experiencing other people's needs. It's an access or a doorway to unity that is practical. Yeah, super, super interesting. Yeah. And great to have you here, Kirsten. And Wendy says, this is very good to hear as it's been a hard torment with a couple of friends. Yeah. So this is a great time for this energy, right? I really hope that this helps. So, okay, they go on next paragraph. The all ways of beingness become more present, more pressing, as though you are entering into new knowledge of one another. The opening hearts, the melding awarenesses create bridges, breaking down obstacles. So it is this awareness, this opening, right, where we start to see things in a new way, and that breaks down the bridges. It breaks down the obstacles in these relationships. They say new ways of melding together. And then they say, next paragraph, they say the instrument of your focus. So how do we get there? The instrument is the argument, right? And the new way of understanding, sharpening perception. So it may mean that you end up in an argument with someone, but that argument takes a very different turn, right? Where you all of a sudden have, they say that it's two tools. It's the argument and a new way of understanding, which sharpens your perception. So it may be that you start the argument or the argument starts, maybe the argument is brought to you, who knows, but that it turns and all of a sudden it's like you see things, maybe see yourself, see the other person in a new light, in a new way, and have a deepening understanding, sharpening perception of what's really happening for you and for the other person. So it could be that the argument was where it started. And then here you are having, for whatever reason, you reconnect with this person and are able to have the deeper perception of them. And so they say, and the new ways of then they say a distilled moment where you are encountering yourself and one another in a new way. So it's a distilled moment. So this is an experience that you can have. A distilled moment. And that distilled is like clarity, like it's a clearly defined moment you can point to and say, yep, that's when it happened. A distilled moment where you are encountering yourself and one another in a new way. And this then focuses how you are now behaving and perceiving and understanding one another. So in the moment, you change. So cool. And they change, right? So amazing. And the chaos that ensues from conflict seems unnecessary, as though you're tranquilized in the subjects that rise between you as obstacles. So it's like it doesn't carry the same weight, right? So it's like it doesn't hurt. Like the things that felt painful or that felt like this is the flag, this is my flag and I will die on this flag, right? All of a sudden it doesn't seem to matter anymore, right? It doesn't carry any weight. You are tranquilized in the subjects, right? It's just like the emotion comes out of it, right? As though their meaning has been shortened and carries no more weight, right? So that's kind of how it happens. It's like someone lets the steam out of the situation. Next paragraph. This feeling of lessening burden, of lightening energies, comes with a ricochet into the self and the sense of who you are and the blending of your mind and the many. It lingers, allowing yourself a new perception of what you are, unfolding before your heart a new opening doorway, a new way of entering into the domain of what has been unsettled. So they're really saying that this is a super duper learning moment for all of us. That in this experience, they say it ricochets into the heart. We see ourselves differently. We might say like, wow, okay, maybe I was being too hard on this person in this relationship. And is there anywhere else where I'm too hard on people? Or maybe I was being really, really sensitive and I was misunderstanding what they were saying. And boy, do I do that in other places? Like, is there somewhere else where I'm also doing that? You know, what does this say about me and in terms of my beliefs? Like, what do I believe about myself that is creating this behavior from me? So it's an opportunity. It bounces back in and we have this really deep moment of growth that they say that opens a new doorway from our heart, which to me is a beautiful thought. Unfolding before your heart, a new opening doorway, which means greater connection, right? That your heart, you can share your heart more easily. So this is a beautiful thing, right? You are entering into the domain of what has been unsettled. So a new way of entering into the domain of what has been unsettled. So where are the conflicts in your life? This is a new way of entering into all of them. So because you have this open doorway of seeing a new way to be and do in those conflicts and to share your heart more easily, right? Like, so cool. Yeah. All right, next paragraph. The evacuation of the energies distilled for this purpose will come to a point, to a head, in the culmination with which you are endowed individually. So in other words, they'll say that how does this show up for everybody? It'll be individual based on your life, right? That how does it come up and expel or get expressed based on your life? It will be a focal point of awareness that comes through contact and constructive engagement with another, right? So it's really about bringing all of your awareness to the moment where you're not, and think about how important that is, that how many times if you're in a difficult situation like that, like say that you're walking down the street and you run into a person that like an ex, ex partner, ex spouse. And when you see that person, you are not seeing them with fresh eyes. You are bringing all the baggage of your difficulty of that relationship when you see them. And so you get uncomfortable, your heart may race. You may feel like you just want to hide, wherever, hide behind the, if you're in the grocery store, you're hiding behind the orange display, whatever. But it's the idea that in this, it is bringing all of it. It's to be a focal point of awareness. So it's pulling you back and out of all that old story where you've told yourself things about who this person is and who you are. And it brings you into the now moment, which gives you a fresh perspective. Right? Because there may be a lot of things that have happened since you had this argument with this other person or had this falling out with this other person. And it may be that they've changed and in this moment, you both can change, right? So it's letting go of all the story, bringing you into the now moment. And they say in a point of awareness that comes through contact and constructive engagement with another, where a new perception of soul and self in contrast and in conflict shall come to your awareness. And I like that they included in contrast and in conflict, because this could come up. Like imagine that this isn't even, maybe it's a certain thing where you say, well, I'm really uncomfortable with a certain type of person. Like maybe that's a person who's like a super outgoing person, right? And they make you really uncomfortable. And so this may be a thing where the contrast, maybe you're a more introverted person and that super outgoing person being around them, you're just like, I don't even talk to me. And so in this moment, the contrast no longer makes you uncomfortable and you see that person more clearly. Yeah. So it's very cool. Mary says, ricochet into the heart, unfolding into your heart, a new doorway. I look forward to this. Yeah, 100%. I bet you could use this on the school board, couldn't you, Mary? So, all right, next paragraph. They say this unsettling of old behaviors leads yourselves into a perspective of sharing and guiding one another through hardship. So this is, they're saying now that this changes us, right? That this experience of seeing ourselves and resolving these difficulties, if we can do it one time, then we can do it every time. So this is the shift that we will make. The unsettling of old behaviors. Lead yourselves into a perspective of sharing and guiding one another through hardship. It opens a doorway, which becomes necessary in future times. So this is because we're trying to move to unity, right? A way of seeing yourselves now differently in harmful prospects. So when things are difficult, and when you are in a harmful prospect, that means that when you're in a fight, when you're in conflict, when someone's hurting your feelings, right? When you feel hurt, that's harmful prospect. And they say, when things are unfolding in ways that feel dormant, quieting, and distinguished, you can come to the aid of one another. So that is that idea that when things feel dormant, quieting, and distinguished, that would be dormant, would be like when you feel shut down or repressed, when you feel like the interaction or the sharing between you has been shut down, right? Quieted. And then distinguished means, so we think of distinguished like it has multiple meanings, but the meaning they mean here, I'm sure, is to make one thing seem different from another, to distinguish. I am me and you are you, and the two shall not cross, right? So think about the connection. If you imagine the connection between you and another person as literally like a tube of light, of like from your heart to theirs, where you're sharing each other, connecting with one another. And when you have conflict, imagine that tube of light becomes dormant and quiet, and you become distinguished, which means you're like, nope, you stay over there and I stay over here. So when things feel like that, they say you can come to the aid of one another and carry within yourself the memory of this time of dwindling separateness. So you can reflect back on this coming month, and the relationships that you're able to heal. They say when you engage with one another in a dialogue founded on real perception, culminating in harmony, and it will draw you toward each other once again. And that real perception they mention here is about that idea of letting go of story, coming into the now moment with your presence, and really trying to see the other person without the filter of our wounding and our hurts and all this stuff. Yeah, to see them as they are now. So super cool. Then they say this comes at a time in your future when the long drawn out beginnings seem to come to term, and you are rising within yourselves more profoundly and certainly. So they're saying that basically that this trend and this skill that we're trying to work on this month will apply towards the unity that we're trying to grow, which comes at a time in our future when the long drawn out beginnings, right? All this work that we've been doing, trying to get there, trying to prepare ourselves for unity, right? Which is not an easy thing. Unity is hard for humans because we have not been there. So why have they been talking about this for so long? This is a skill set that we're trying to build. We have to break through our own resistance, which is so hard, right? The drawn out beginnings seem to come to term, right? And you are rising within yourselves more profoundly and certainly. So that's when we will really use this skill, is when we're finally ready to really move into full unity. Yeah. So, and where are we? There we are. All right. And welcome, Natalie. It's your first time live. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. And Teresa is saying this may be families reuniting, ours split. We used to be so close. Yeah. I think this is just a really hopeful message. You just say that here, this energy is available to us this month, March into April. This energy is available to us. So yeah, let's, like if you maybe wait till you feel called, follow your own guidance, your own intuition, but feel into it when the time is right. Maybe this is the time to pick up the phone, and reach out to that person and just see what happens. But wait till you feel it, right? Wait till you feel yourself, the door opening inside of you, so that you step into it when you're ready. Yeah. So, and Cheryl, welcome, first live. Great you're here. All right. So next paragraph. And then this one. So this is the next section. Now they're moving on to the next topic. So then they say this next month, endows yourself with a creative spark of individualism. So this is really interesting because they kind of take this idea and they say, okay, this energy is going to affect how you relate to the outside world, where we're going to break down barriers and things, obstacles between us and everyone else. Then they turn it around and they say, basically, this energy is going to affect you internally as well. So, which creates, they say, a creative spark of individualism. So that this next month endows yourself with a creative spark of individualism. So this is how they say it. They say, a creative spark of individualism and desire to be what you are. A sense of yourself overcoming odds, a separation from what you have been and what is overpowering to yourself. A sense of yourself as claiming in dialogue and focus what you shall be, and disintegrating those thoughts of surrender to an influence that does not belong to you. So this is really about, this paragraph is about the ways in which we feel freer in this coming month to be true to who we really are and to let down of whatever repressive energies have caused us to keep parts of ourself hidden, right? Anywhere where we feel like we are conforming, right? The sense of yourself is claiming in dialogue and focus. So you're talking about it, you're starting to work on it, you're putting energy toward it, right? What you want to be, who you are, right? And disintegrating those thoughts of surrender to an influence that does not belong to you. So what is it that has been keeping you from expressing this part of yourself? That disintegrates, right? So, and that is that bridge that separates you from yourself. It's the same energy, right? Where it's like that whatever the emotion is or the baggage or whatever that keeps us separated. So, and that separation from others, separation from self. So then they go on to say about this, they say, you shall become more present and aware of the conflicts that are unnecessarily held within yourself, regarding engaging in the tumult of your own housing. And this is interesting. So the tumult means a loud, confused noise caused by a large mass of people. So not an accidental word. Why a large mass of people inside you, right? Held within yourself regarding engaging in the tumult of your own housing, tumult in your own body. So why would there be a large number of people in your own body? Because we are made of many different selves. Like every moment of your life is almost like another person inside your body. So you have the child self, the infant self, you have your elementary school self, you have your teenage self. They're all in there and all of them have their own wounds and their own ideas. And it's almost like they're locked in time. And then you also have all your past lives, all these other selves you've been and it's kind of like, it's not like every single moment, but it's like peak moments, like moments that changed your direction, that changed your belief systems, that caused you to behave differently. And all those moments are locked up in all these other people that are you, inside of you. And all those varying different pressures are like a tumult, right? A loud, overwhelming noise, a voice of many different people inside you. So you become more present and aware to the conflicts between all these yous that are in you, right? That are unnecessarily held within yourself regarding engaging in the tumult of your own housing, where emotionality stems from the depth of what you are, right? And so that means that emotionality stems, it's like literally our deepest self. What are our deepest fears, our deepest shame, the thing that we don't want to face, right? You shall come to terms with that more violent prospect of your own internal surrender to self. So this is really about trying to break down the barriers within us. Yeah. The creative aspects of which we are speaking are to come forward or to come toward and forward from the distinguishing of your individual light as though it can be shared in safety. Whereas before you felt yourself in a dormancy of quiet sleep. So they're saying that this individualism, that's going to be this self-expression, this creative spark of individualism is coming forward. They're saying that it's a distinguishing of your individual light. So it's interesting how they're returning to this idea of distinguishing, because there's the distinguishing of self and other in separation, right? Where you're saying, okay, I'm going to take mine and you take yours and we're never going to talk again. But then you also have the part where you say, this is who I am and I'm sharing my authentic self, right? And that is like being vulnerable and opening your heart and welcoming in love from other people. And so it plays just like everything. There's a yin and a yang energy. There's a light and a shadow to everything. So this concept of being distinguished can be cut positively and negatively. It can separate you, but it can also unite you, right? If you are open and sharing who you are and sharing that with another person, which then goes full circle, because if you share yourself, you're no longer separated. So it's beautiful how they use their words and how they come back around to the same idea. But let's say, come forward with the distinguishing of your individual light as though it can be shared in safety. So that's the difference. There's something about the way you feel in the coming month where all of a sudden it feels not as scary to share who you really are, right? They say where it feels like you can be doing it in safety all of a sudden. They say, whereas before you felt yourselves in a dormancy of quiet sleep, where it was just like you wouldn't even want to think about it because it was just, it didn't feel safe. Yeah. Therefore, the instigation of new things shall become more endowed with this quiet stroke, as though the self in slumber slowly guides them to the surface to be discovered. So it is this feeling like it's done, like it's a quiet stroke. It's gentle. It is subtle and soft how this comes up to the surface, and it feels safe. So it's not coming out in an anger or in a resistance to anything. It's almost as if the restraints are off and all of a sudden this kind of just burbles up, and it just feels like it's almost like it just kind of comes up into your awareness, and then all of a sudden you feel at ease with it and at peace with it, and you feel safe in sharing it. Yeah, super cool. They go on to say, you cannot now have within yourself an understanding of what this shall be. So we don't know what it is. For the spoken mind does not often encounter these quiet moments, but this distilled sentiment contains a power to elucidate what you are in a new way. So a distilled sentiment means this is a purified sense of who you are, right? And it extracts the essence of you, this thing that's going to come up to be expressed, right? And it's a feeling. Purified sentiment, distilled sentiment of who you are, contains a power to elucidate. Elucidate means clarify by explanation, which means it's the power to elucidate means that you can express this and share more of who you really are with others. That's what they're saying. A pronouncement that can be shared and revealed. Thus, creative forces are at play among many. Like, so cool, right? So cool. Yeah. And Dylan's here. Hi, welcome, Dylan. Finally caught you live for the first time too. Fantastic. Oh, and from Olympia. You're like practically a neighbor. So, all right. So then going on, next paragraph. So they switch to the next subject. So they say, okay, so here's the next thing that's going to happen in the month of March, I mean. They say, and this is like March, April, kind of like, you know how angels are. And like, this is coming, but short term, Marchish. We say the endurance of where you are shall change this month. The sensation that you are rising to be weakened. There is not the endurance that you'd hoped for. So it sounds like in this coming time period, this next month to 2 months, that we won't, that it's almost like being a little extra tired is what it sounds like to me. The endurance, that it feels like, for whatever reason, it's just harder to get up and get going in the next time period. And they say, and because of that, they see a fear settles among yourself, that you shall not make the yards, the sense of distance. So because you feel tired, you might start to question yourself and worry that whatever it is you're working on, whatever it is you wanted to do this month, that you won't accomplish it. And then they say that the ongoing futile expression of these days of turmoil become overwhelming, and you feel settled within your own heart to endure no longer, as though giving up were a preference. So it makes you feel like whatever it is you were going to start or whatever it is you've been working on, it's like you feel a little bit gutted, like you just can't get the get up and go, like the desire to finish, to work on stuff. You have no motivation basically. And that lack of motivation will make you feel like, that this it's not worth it. It's not going to work. I can't do it. All of that. Right. And so your heart starts to feel like you should just give up. And so they speak to that and they say, and we say to count upon your heart in these times. They say to know yourselves in need of momentary lapses of energy, and that the restorative value of these agonizing times of disquiet is enormous. So they're saying that when and if this happens to you, if you end up with this feeling, to not judge it, to not feel like you're doing it wrong, not feel like you are the only one, to recognize this is an energy we are moving for and that it is of service. And they say that count upon your heart, know yourself, know that you are guided, right? Know that this is what your heart wants, whatever it is that you are going to be working on. And that in the process of being, it's like we have 4 seasons as a being, just like the earth has 4 seasons, that we have a winter, and this is your winter. And that these momentary lapses of energy, this winter that you're going to go through, has a restorative value, right? That is going to be helpful to you. right? And that they say that the restorative value of these agonizing times of disquiet is enormous. This is not a small bit. It's almost like they're helping us to gather energy, right? To restore ourselves so that we can move into what's next. Yeah. And they go on to say, in the pace of your own reverie, you extinguish those longings which demonstrate your own hardship. So that's a mouthful and it's a good one. So let's break it down. So they're saying that why is this restorative value, restorative power so enormous for this period of quiet, this period of low motivation? They say, because in the pace of your own reverie means like daydreaming, lost in thought. So when you are in this time period, because you're not doing anything, you're going to be daydreaming, you're going to be thinking, your mind is going to wander. And as it wanders, you will start reflecting on your feelings. And as you reflect on your feelings, they say you extinguish those longings which demonstrate your own hardship. So as you go through the process, it's like you start to reflect and think about the things that you wish you had, the things that where you punish yourself, the negative thoughts you have about yourself. And in this process of going internal, you start to see those thoughts and you become aware of them and you become self-aware. And you extinguish those longings to be different, right? That you work through it, basically. It gives you an opportunity to work through those challenges. So, and they say, so in those challenges, they say, demonstrate your own hardship. So that last piece there is important because they're saying it demonstrates your own hardship. So what that means is that it is the longings, the places where we are having these negative thoughts, that we are holding ourselves back, right? Those then become our hardships. Those then manifest in our reality as hardships. So it is restorative. The value of it is enormous because it gives us a chance to work through our issues, which then heals our world, the world around us, right? Super cool. They say, and thus in the expression of these low moments, you guide yourself toward higher expressive volubility. Volubility is like how much, the volubility, the volume, like how much of yourself is being able to, how much can you express of yourself? You can contain much more when these feelings are settled. So very cool. Then they say, thus we guide you to not restrict the low endowments when you feel yourself being stretched or ignored, undistinguished or left, when you feel yourself aching and unformed and without the will to move forward. They're saying just when it comes up, just feel it, feel the feels, acknowledge it, be with it, recognize that you are in a winter period of quiet, and then go internal and allow yourself to reflect and use this as a time to see yourself more closely. Yeah, super cool. So then they go on to say, there we go. Where is it? Where was I? There you go. Okay, so then last paragraph of this section, they say, recognize in the space of these coming weeks, you will endure a loss of amplitude and force within the body. So this is what they're saying. Lack of motivation, lack of will. This you will endure and move beyond. And in the becoming, you will carry a brighter, heavier endowment of grace because of it. So they're just kind of summing it up. They're saying, no, it's coming. You might feel lack of will. You might feel like there's no oomph going on. And they say that you will endure and move beyond it. This is not forever. This is a temporary thing. You will move out of it. And in the becoming, you will have more grace, right? That you will have, your life will be brighter. You will be brighter because of it, which is super cool. So, all right. So moving on. Next paragraph. So this is the next subject. So they've moved on to the next theme. They say, we say in the coming months, the spectacle of where you are shall increase in its length and duration. By this we mean that the surrounding light of the astral shall carry more force and weight upon you. So it sounds like we're going to be getting a lot of like solar action in the next month. We're going to be a lot of heavy energies in terms of, when I say heavy, it's usually a good thing for the angels. High frequencies feel heavy to us. So that is my absolute physical experience of channeling the angels, is when they come in, it feels like, whoosh, you know what I mean? And when I first started doing it, these days I'm used to it. But when it first started coming in, it felt like somebody was like sitting on me. It was really heavy. And so, but it will feel like a force of weight. And so maybe that's why we feel like we have no motivation, is maybe our bodies are trying to process this more light coming to the planet. So it could be that this one and the last topic are related, right? It could be one and the same, because it takes a lot of energy. Like when I first started channeling the angels, it wiped me out, absolutely wiped me out. So that may be why we feel like we have no energy in the coming month. So, but they're saying that the surrounding light of the astral shall carry more force and weight upon you. So all this, we're going to be getting a lot more energy hitting the planet. A sense of your own selves as struggling is lengthened. The overpowering now you are committed to, and you forge a new blessing. So they're saying that the sense of your own selves as struggling is lengthened. So there's, like I said, that sense of like everything becomes a bit more of a grind because of this, and the struggle, and then the overpowering now you are committed to, and you forge a new blessing. So you stay committed. So just stay committed to being present is what they're saying. Then they go on to say, we say in the uncomfortableness of these endowments, we say the uncomfortableness of these endowments shall not last, shall not be enduring. So in other words, it won't be forever, this heaviness. But the lengthening of the soul shall stay with you, and you shall feel yourself again in the formation of the new endowment. So they're saying this is a great thing, that it does help us, it does stretch us and help us raise our frequency, and it moves us more towards this shift in consciousness that we are making. Yeah. All right, then they go on to say, next subject. So now they're talking about, this is an interesting one. So this is where they're starting to, they say, as for specifics of what may pass in different parts of the world, they say, we perceive a sharing of peoples across distances where others may come to terms with their own hearts unsettled and pave the way for transference of large amounts of persons. So in other words, like migration of large amounts of people picking up and moving from one place to another, and in large numbers. And we have already seen this in this, like when I hear this, I think about what's going on in the US at the southern border. I think about the areas, war-torn areas that we have around the world right now. I also think about like that could mean like weather events that make areas unsafe for people or things like that, where they have to, like large numbers of people moving. But they mention other reasons down here. So for whatever reason, there's this energy of the movement of peoples. And of course, the angels are interested in it, not at all from a political standpoint. They are interested in what it means for the collective consciousness. For if you think of all of us as one, every human being is connected to every other human being. We are one. And some portion of us, a significant number of us, are picking up and leaving our homes and leaving everything behind and becoming uprooted and moving to a new place without knowing where we're going. That becomes a current through the collective consciousness that affects all of us. And that's what they're saying. So try as much as you can to not get drawn into the political parts of this, because they are highly politicized, and to think just about the spiritual implications of what happens when a large portion of us, meaning all of humanity, meaning our collective, goes through this experience and how it will transform us as a collective. So then they say, the movement of peoples is a blessing that comes to be revealed. So that is it. They're saying that because this affects the collective consciousness, it is a blessing to the collective. It's an energy that will shift us in a needed way, right? So that blessing comes to be revealed. So we won't understand it right away. And then they say the transference of people does happen in the coming months. The movement of peoples from one place to another in mass, in dialogue with their own identity and will. So this is the part they said in the beginning about that they come to terms with their own hearts unsettled and pave the way for transference of large amounts of people. So this is something where they just can't stay where they are anymore for whatever reason. Their own hearts, they're just like, we have to go, we have to leave. We can't stay here for whatever reason, right? They're moving from their own identity and will. So it's they're picking up and leaving. Yeah. And they say, and so I think that's important, that this is and it might be that they're being forced to leave because like maybe it's a weather event, but even so, they are making the choice. They could just stay and yeah, it might mean death, but they could just stay, but they're not. They're saying, nope, I choose life. I choose to live. I'm going to pick up and leave all my things behind and go somewhere else and go through that experience, which is scary. It's a scare. I can imagine what that must be like. So, in kind of dialogue with their own identity and will, a sense of themselves as escaping on trial in the suggestion of having been held against their will. So that's interesting. In the desire for freedom, in the desire for meaningful existence. So it could be for all of these different reasons, right? Where it could be that they are being treated unfairly or treated badly in some place, right? Being held against their will. Maybe it's that they desire freedom. It says maybe that they want to have a better life. It could be just a better life. So there's lots of different reasons why this could happen, is what they're saying. They come to your door, meaning everyone, all of humanity. They come to your door on the highways of transference along the lines of the earth herself. Super interesting. So will they be traveling on ley lines? That's what I wonder. Like, is this, and if that's the case, like, how interesting. If you think of us as the neurons of the world, that we are her thoughts. And if people are traveling along ley lines in large numbers, how does that shift the collective? Does it shift it more strongly? Like, so interesting. On the highways of transference along the lines of the earth herself. So fascinating, right? I'm so curious about that. I don't know if anybody has a map, if you've sketched out, if you've ever seen, like, where are the major arteries, the ley lines of the, and I know there's lots of like little itty bitty ones everywhere, but like, what are the big ley lines of the earth? So curious. Yeah. Okay. And then they say seeking refuge and are sometimes denied. So that is an important part, I think, in the energy, that the people are uprooted, they are seeking refuge and are sometimes denied. So like I said, stay away from the politics on this, look at the energy. And they go on to say, this we see in the coming months. They are unsettling to the consciousness of humanity. The great drifts of persons who feel themselves not endowed with a container to call home and a place to make family. So this is the energy. So, and think about how long the angels have been talking to us about the need to let go and the need to surrender and to not cling on to the way that things were, and to be willing to kind of step onto the edge of the wave and then just let energy move through us and to create our reality as it steps in front of us. Well, large numbers of people are going to be doing that de facto, because they will leave everything behind and they will be playing, it'll be hard Scrabble trying to figure out where do they sleep that night, right? They won't have a home to go back to. So they, like it or not, they're going to be in this energy. And how will that shift the collective, right? So super, super interesting. They say this shall become an ongoing current that makes its way through the patterns of your consciousness. So it is this, I think it is this free will. Think about what they're emphasizing in the conversation here. They're emphasizing it's a choice. It's a free will to pick up and leave, right? To pick up and move on, to let go, a free will, let go. And in that process, right? What was I going to say? That it's that idea that, being willing to let go and to be living in the state of allowing. So that becomes a current that moves through our consciousness. So interesting. The unsettled and unsettling feelings of those that have surrendered their port to the way and unfolding. So it's almost like this is a process. We have to go, I think it would be very, very difficult on humanity for us to just, it's sort of like saying, okay, that again, those angels coming in and snapping their fingers, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to snap our fingers, and all of a sudden you will no longer shop for anything ever again. You know what I mean? Like, you will let go of all worldly possessions, boom, and you don't care anymore. You know what I mean? You no longer look at the catalogs that are delivered to your house. You don't care. And so, and that's a big ask. You know what I mean? It's a big ask to just let go of the things that we have thought of as being comfort and stability and home and family and the ways that we define our life and all of that. It's very hard to you're just going to give it up and move on. So this is a way to transform us in large bits at a time. And I think it is, they're not saying that we're going to get all the way there. What we are going to do is we're going to face the discomfort of it. And we might be on either side of that discomfort. We might be the ones on the other side who, where there's masses of people that are moving into your hometown and creating chaos, right? Absolute chaos. So that's possible too. So you could be on either end. You could be looking at the people who have been uprooted and have no way to make home and family. You could be on the other side saying, how do we make space for these people in a way that doesn't destroy our city, right? You could be on either side. So whatever it is creating a ripple effect through the collective and helping us to prepare to get to a time and space where we are no longer so attached to stuff. Right? And that doesn't mean we won't have stuff. It doesn't mean that we won't have a home. It doesn't mean that we won't have things that feel familiar and comfortable. But will we be so attached to them? Will we feel free to let go? I will tell you guys, I think I've mentioned it many times, but on my journey of my life, it was in my 20s. in my 20s, my boss, back when I was working at Microsoft, my boss had a budget for like employee morale. And she had the coolest idea, which was she gave us each an astrology reading. And so I had mine. And the astrologer said, I hope you're not attached to your place where you live. And I was like, not at all. I was sharing a house with like 4 other girls at the time. And it was just a rental. And I was like, no, not at all. And she's like, good, because you're not going to be living there very long. In fact, you are going to move and move and move and move throughout your life. Like you are never going to stay still. And it was my 20s. So she told me this and I was like, yeah, whatever. And she could not have been more right. Like you would be hard pressed to find a stretch of more than 2 years that I was in any home. And that is despite the fact that I have built multiple homes thinking that that would be my forever home. But something would happen. It wouldn't necessarily be by choice. It would be something would happen. And I would have to move. You know, sometimes it'd be a divorce. It'd be, you know, all kinds of different reasons. I'd have to sell and move and start over again. And it's been like every 2 years. So this idea of letting go and allowing, and I'll tell you the other funny thing about that is that, so in each of those houses I did, because there's a period in my life where I really loved like interior design and all that, like that way of expressing yourself, I found really exciting for like most of my like really in my 30s, I was like really into that. And so in each of those homes that I worked on, I always did stuff that I felt was like really unique and cool and different. You know, I'd find like antique sconces and have them rewired or, you know, do something really special. One time I found these incredible doors that were all hand carved. I found them in someone's basement they were stunning mahogany doors. I had just enough to do the house. It was like mind blowing. And every time I had to leave the house, I was always so tempted to take those elements with me to keep them, you know, and I always said no except once. And it was when I was selling a house and I had put up these super expensive curtains. I had bunches of them and it was this really expensive fabric. And I was like, well, these are just curtains. I can take them. You know, they're just curtains. They're not like nailed in. And they were perfect where they were, you know, and they were super in style and super cute. And so I took them and I regretted it ever since. Like I had them all folded up in a garbage bag and I moved them every 2 years. I moved them from house to house to house to house until finally they were so out of style that nobody wants them. And it was tragic. It was absolutely tragic. So I should have just left them where they were perfect, you know, where they matched everything and they were perfect. And so it was really like a lesson to me, this concept of like, I have been this migrant person in my own way of having to pick up all my belongings and move my family, you know, and always within the same basic city, but still major uprooting every 2 years. And so I think this is this concept of getting us really accustomed to the idea of being in flow and not being set in our ways, being present in the moment and willing to see reality in this really present way, which we can't do if we are stuck in our patterns. So I see this movement of peoples, what they're describing here is that it's literally like starting to condition us to the idea of picking up and letting go, that we are okay and that we will survive and that we will be all right without these things. And I think it's a really, really interesting topic that they bring up. Really, really interesting. And you are saying that, so let me catch up. You're saying, Shelley says, I love this message. Yeah, me too. It really is beautiful. Let me get to the end and then I'm going to go back and read all the comments and talk through them. So then, the last bit that they talk about, is banking. And they've had a lot of other messages about the banking system, which is interesting because they started talking about the banking system, there being a banking crisis. They first talked about it in 2020, saying that there would be bank closures. And so I was amazed when it started happening, where we started having Silicon Valley Bank and then all these other banks started failing exactly the way they described. They said at the time that the exact message they gave us was that in at least one of those messages, they said there would be bank failures where it would be the people who had very large deposits that basically, they didn't say FDIC insurance, but that was the meaning. They basically said that you would get your money back. So not to, but they did say that there would be that it would be gone for a while. It would be closed. The bank would be closed. So they talked about that, but I believe that there's more to it. I should go back and reread some of those old messages, but here they're talking about the banks again. And they say that, in banking, they said, you shall discover the yield of crossed currents an undertow that draws into them. The small behind the medium sizing institutions, the small shall suffer. So let's repeat that. In banking, you shall discover the yield of cross currents and undertow. So, and interesting to use the word yield because that's like a banking term, and that usually means like what is made from this? What do you yield by? And the yield would be like the earnings in banking. It would be like your savings account yields, what is it, 3% or whatever, which is a lot better than it's been in the past, but it's still bad. So your bank account, so in other words, what is the yield? Well, you shall discover the yield of cross currents and undertow. And they gave me a visual with this of, imagine that you have two riptides in the ocean, and one is like a diagonal line going this way, and the other is a diagonal line going this way, and the two meet like this. And this one is the small, this is the medium banks, this is the small banks, and the small banks go under. And that was the visual that they gave me. And so it's this idea of tide. It's a pull, right? And so there's force to it. There's energy to it. And it's an undertow, right? That pulls you down and under, cross currents and undertow that draws into them the small behind the medium sizing institutions. So it's almost like if there is help available, the small banks are behind the medium banks. So they're last in line to get helped, right? And the small shall suffer. The small shall begin a gentle decline, not disguised or in denial. So it's almost like gentle decline doesn't mean like it's a wave that knocks them all out in one. It's like one by one by one, right? You shall find themselves, the banks, in the pressure of the convergence of their own assets against the mired opportunities of their investments. So the mired opportunities of it means they've invested in some bad stuff, some stuff that's going to take them under. And their own assets. So the assets means if their assets and their investments are so it could mean that they have assets that lose their worth or their value, right? Is what that could mean. So and their investments, they've made bad investments. So, and they shall be brought to their knees and drown in the undertow of this banking crisis. This shall come. So what's interesting about that is, as I say that, I feel like they're saying the whole banking crisis, it's an undertow. It's not a one-time thing, a moment. It's not over, is what they're saying. This shall come to pass in the coming months as we see the occurrence revealing itself. So it might be more than just a month. It might be but we might see that starting in March. So, and like I said, there was a lot here. I know it was like a super long message, and there's more. I think I mentioned before that the reason I asked this question of what's coming in March is because I was on a podcast, the Den Talks, Den Talks podcast, and it was on what are the energies of March? So I channeled it, and I'd never asked that question of the angels before. So and I loved the answer. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know they could do this. I was like, ooh, I didn't know you guys had this answer. So it was really cool. And so in that podcast, we kind of talked about all the message more generally. So there's some parts that I didn't include here that I included there that we just kind of talk about thematically, and we talk about a bunch of other stuff too. So as that podcast becomes available, I'll link to it so you guys can see it if you want to see the whole message. So all right, so let's go up and see what you guys are saying. And here we are. We're back. Okay, good. I'm so glad. I don't know how this is working, but it seems to be working because my computer says no internet. So I am thrilled that we seem to be connected. Magic. That is so awesome. There we go. Angels are helping. Maybe that's it. Maybe this is a divine connection. I am grateful. Wherever it's working, it is awesome. So there we go. He says, my mom called just before you said we lost connection. I sent it to voice. Weird. I never stopped hearing you. That's so interesting. Yeah. And there have been many recent solar flares without CMEs, coronal mass ejections. Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see if we do get this more light hitting the planet that kind of wipes us out a little bit and drains our energy. Cheryl says, I've been getting hints that my body is being prepared. Super cool. Dashini says, could it be that my body reacts with anxiety when it feels like someone is sitting on my chest? So absolutely. And if it feels like something's sitting on your chest, that could easily be you trying to accept a higher frequency. That's how I felt the angels when they came in. It was like pressure here and here and heavy, like someone sitting on me, to the point where it was hard to breathe. So if you are feeling that pressure, very likely, try to go up, try to open yourself up and think of it as like G forces, like they're trying to raise your frequency up to a level where like it's hard for them to come down here and talk to us, extremely hard. Like it's a big trip, a big journey for them to get down here. And so they want us to meet them halfway. They want you to come up a little bit so that you can meet them. And the way you can do that is go into gratitude. Like as you feel that pressure, stop yourself and start meditating on what makes you feel grateful and consciously raise your frequency. And then as you do, open your crown and then just try to let yourself kind of float up as if you're a cloud. And then hopefully you can connect, but they need you to go up so that they can connect with you where it's not so hard on them. Yeah. And then Raya says, this resonates so much. An entity attachment blocked my connection to the angels and my guides for healing, which left me panicked and lost. I realized that it's the best thing for me and I need to focus on my own healing, and creative projects are calling me again. It's helped me focus on the present moment and to let go of a lot of fear and limiting beliefs I hold. Isn't that amazing how all things are of service? Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Shelley says, I love this message. Me too. Yeah. Dashini says, makes me think about refugee politics in Europe. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not an isolated problem for sure. So we don't know where it might be happening. It literally could be anywhere because there's so many areas that have been experiencing this. Karen says, do you still have the sense that it is safe to travel? I am still traveling. Yeah. I've got plans. I'm still booking trips. So yeah, I'm still traveling. And so that's what I feel right. If you listen to your own discernment, of course, but to me, it still feels safe to travel. Carrie says, if we are seeing this mass migration already, and now they mention it must be a marvel of amounts upcoming. Sure, it might be, right? Or it may be that it's just that the energies are putting a magnifying glass on it, so that it amplifies in our collective. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'll be curious. Dashini says, always follow your own heart. Exactly. And then, where are you going? Patty says, powerful ley lines at Earth Sanctuary on Whidbey Island. Yeah, super cool. So I know that there's some people that's their gifting, is that they can walk, as they're walking, they'll just be like, oh, there's a ley line. They feel it in their body. So yeah, if we have any of those in the group and you have a map of the Earth with ley lines, let us know. Yeah. Sand mandalas, in a sense. Oh, that's an interesting. I'm not sure what that's referring to, Dashini. I'm curious. Dashini says, and I also think about sharing space. Carrie says that constant rebuilding is a testimonial to your strength. Thank you very much. And it built that. It really did. It built flexibility and all of it made me much less attached to things, for sure. So it really has been of service. Like, it may have been hard at times, but it really has made me so much more flexible. So it's definitely for the best. It's like a lot of things. You can look back and be like, oh, that was hard. But yeah, I really like who I am because of it. Like, I'm much happier as a person because of it. Yeah. Not afraid to lose things. And then Lalenia says, I feel as though all of the walls are caving in currently, and have visions of me selling all but my bike, books, and belongings to cook and eat upon, start over and start fresh somewhere by the ocean. Doesn't that sound beautiful? That really does. Yeah, it is freeing. I did that in one of my, I've been married twice. My second divorce, when I left, I moved from a big house to a very small place. It was like the only place I could find. I needed something like immediately, because my daughter was in school, like she was starting the next week. So we needed to get settled right away. So I just took what I could find, and I deliberately made an inventory of just what I needed, like only the things that would exactly fit into that space. And I left everything else. So I just went in, I literally took everything. I moved in half a day. I went in, I just selected, cherry picked just the things I needed, and literally just closed the door on all of my other possessions. I did take my Vitamix blender. That was an important part. As a vegan, you got to have a Vitamix. But yeah, and it was incredibly freeing. It was not at all sad. It was incredibly freeing. It was just like my house had just what I needed. You'd open every cupboard. It would be like, so organized. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So yeah, props to you. I hope you can do it. Carrie says, so the big banks get saved again. I think, but the thing is, remember the angels talked about the energy of exhaustion, that the current institutions will save themselves first. The banks will save, and the ones that have the most power will save themselves first. But the angels have said we are burning it to the ground, right? Which means that won't happen in the long run. But in the unraveling, you bet they will save themselves, because they can. So that's why we have to have such a deep, it has to be a rotor-rooter experience of shifting our society. Yeah, Sherry says, quite a packed message from March, April. I know, April. Yeah, exactly. And then Maya says, this past week I've been so motivated to purge and clean all my possessions. Me too. I have been going through everything and sorting and clearing out and giving things away, 100%. And so is Sherry. Yeah. Tricia says, have you noticed energy keeping awake at night? Not so much as me, but I've been in we've been doing soul convergence, which means when we're doing that process, I sleep pretty heavy during that process. Dashini says your homes. Yeah. Your homes. The sand mandalas and your home, building and leaving again. Oh, yes. Oh, beautiful metaphor. I love that you build like sand mandalas. So that's the idea that they create these incredible, beautiful works of art out of sand. And when it's finished, they let it stay for like 3 days and then wash it away. That's exactly right. Oh my gosh, I love that. So beautiful. Thank you. Cheryl says, Trisha, the moon might have influence. Yes, 100%. And Natalie, love the Vitamix. Yeah, me too. Lalania says, that's how I imagine it would be. And Anne says, I love this medicine. Thank you so much, Patty. I'm going to see your daughter pretty soon. Yay. Patty's daughter cuts my hair and I need a haircut desperately. So I'm excited to go see her. All right, you guys, I hope you have an amazing weekend, sending you tons of love. And have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next Friday live. Bye, you guys.